I spent most of my life trying to earn my place in rooms I was already standing in. And the exhausting part is that nobody asked me to. I did it entirely to myself, quietly and completely, for almost 3 decades before I finally understood what I was doing. My name is Ethan. I am 30 now, and what I am about to tell you is something I have only recently been able to say out loud without feeling ashamed of it. It started early, earlier than I can fully remember. I grew up in a household where love was present but approval felt conditional in ways that were never spoken directly. My father, a man who worked hard and said little, was not unkind. But praise from him was rare enough that when it came, it landed like something significant. Something to be chased, something to be earned again and again because earning it once was never quite enough. I was a quiet kid who watched carefully. I noticed what got noticed. Good grades got a nod. A trophy got a smile. Doing something well and being seen doing it well produced a specific warmth in the room that I became addicted to before I had the vocabulary to call it that. So I worked. From the time I was young I worked harder than I needed to at almost everything. Not because I loved the work always, but because the outcome of the work was the thing that felt like proof. Proof that I belonged. Proof that I was worth something. Proof that I was, in the simplest and most painful word, enough. I carried that into school and then into friendships and then into every job I ever had. The pattern was so consistent and so invisible to me that I genuinely believed I was just a driven person. A motivated person, someone with high standards, and maybe some of that was true, but underneath all of it was something much more fragile. A boy who had never fully believed he was worth anything without evidence to present. By the time I was 25 I was working at a design agency, putting in hours nobody asked me to put in, volunteering for projects that stretched me thin, never saying no to anything that might result in someone thinking well of me. My colleague Sam, who was 27, once told me I was the most capable person he had ever worked with. I held on to that sentence for weeks. Not because it felt good. Because I needed it. I was running on external validation the way some people run on coffee, constantly, and crashing without it. My personal life looked similar. In friendships I was always the one who gave more, offered more, remembered more. Not because I was calculating, but because making myself indispensable felt like the safest way to ensure I would not be left behind. If I was useful enough, needed enough, good enough, nobody would leave. Nobody would decide I was not worth keeping. But then something happened that I did not see coming, and it started so quietly I almost missed it. I was 26 when I got into a relationship with a man named Ryan. He was 28, steady and warm, the kind of person who said what he meant without a lot of extra noise around it. In the beginning I did what I always did. I tried to be everything. Thoughtful, available, attentive, endlessly accommodating. I shaped myself around what I imagined he needed before he even asked for it. For about 6 months it worked the way these things work when one person is trying very hard and calling it love. But then Ryan said something to me that I was not prepared for. We were sitting in his kitchen one evening and he looked at me and said, "Ethan, you do not have to keep doing all of this. I am not going anywhere." I did not know what to do with that sentence. I genuinely did not know how to receive it, because my entire relational framework was built on the idea that I had to earn staying. That affection was a transaction and my role was always to make sure I was contributing more than I took. And here was someone telling me quietly that none of that was necessary and I felt more unsettled by it than comforted. That unsettled feeling told me something important. I just was not ready to look at it yet. The relationship with Ryan was good, genuinely good, but I could feel myself straining against something I could not name. There were moments where he was simply at ease and I was internally working, scanning for what I should be doing, whether I was being enough, whether he was happy enough with me. I was exhausting myself inside a relationship that was actually safe. And that gap, between how safe it actually was and how unsafe I kept feeling, was something I could not explain away. Have you ever been in something real and good and still felt like you were about to lose it at any moment? Like no amount of evidence could convince that part of you that it was okay to relax. That is where I was. And I did not understand why. Things came to a head about a year into the relationship. Not with an argument exactly. More like a conversation that was so honest it felt like surgery. Ryan told me gently that he felt like he could never fully reach me. That I was always giving but never receiving. That he wanted to know who I actually was underneath all the effort and he was not sure I was letting him see. I sat with that for a long time. Days, actually, because it was the most accurate thing anyone had ever said to me and it opened something I had kept sealed for a very long time. I started talking to a therapist. Not because I was falling apart but because I finally understood that I had a pattern I could not see clearly from inside it. Her name was not important but she was the kind of person who asked questions that sat with you for a week after the session. In our third conversation she asked me something simple. She asked when I had first learned that I needed to earn love. I started to answer and then stopped. Because the answer came from somewhere much younger than I expected. And it was not a dramatic memory. It was just a small, quiet, accumulated truth that I had been living inside for so long I had mistaken it for my personality. What happened next surprised me and changed things in a way I am still processing. Over the following months I started noticing the pattern in real time. I would catch myself doing something, at work, in the relationship, with friends, and I would stop and ask whether I was doing it because I wanted to or because I was afraid of what would happen if I did not. The answers were uncomfortable. Often the honest answer was fear. Not always, but often enough to matter. I started making different choices. Small ones at first. I let a work task be good enough instead of perfect. I said no to a project that would have stretched me too thin. I told Ryan one evening that I had had a hard day and I did not want to talk about it but I wanted him to just sit with me. And he did, without needing me to perform being okay. That was one of the most quietly significant moments of my adult life. Needing something and asking for it and having it given without conditions. It sounds so small, but for someone who had spent 30 years believing that needing things made you a burden, it was enormous. The shift was not instant. I want to be clear about that because I think it matters. Patterns that were built over decades do not dissolve in a few months of awareness. There were still days when the old machinery kicked in, when I caught myself working for approval I had not been asked to earn. When I felt the familiar anxiety of wondering whether I was enough in a given moment. But I started to notice it, and noticing is different from being swallowed by it. I am 30 now and I still work hard. I still care about doing things well. I still show up fully for the people in my life. But the reason has changed, and that change in reason changes everything about how it feels. I do those things now because I want to, not because I am terrified of what I am without them. Ryan and I are still together. He told me recently that something in me has settled. He said it in a simple way, like he was just observing something true. And I knew exactly what he meant. The straining I had been doing for so long, the invisible effort of constantly proving myself, had finally started to ease. Not disappear completely, but ease. And ease, I have learned, is something you have to practice. Something you have to choose over and over until it starts to feel like yours. I want to say something to whoever is listening to this and recognizing themselves in it. The exhaustion you feel might not be from working too hard. It might be from working for the wrong reason. There is a difference between effort that comes from wanting to build something and effort that comes from being afraid of what you are without the result. One feels expansive, the other slowly empties you. You were not born needing to earn your place. That was learned, and what was learned can, slowly and with patience, be unlearned. You do not have to be more. You do not have to prove it again. You do not have to make yourself indispensable to everyone around you just to feel like staying is allowed. You were allowed to stay. You were always allowed to stay. Leave a comment below and tell me if any part of this felt like yours. Tell me what you have been trying to earn and how long you have been trying. This is a space where that kind of honesty is safe and welcome. If this story reached something in you, share it with someone who is still trying to be enough. Like this video and subscribe to Untold Perspectives. There are more stories here, and every one of them is told for moments exactly like this. You are enough, not when you have proved it. Right now, exactly as you are.